This is quite new. We're having a first look at the Waves Curves Equator. And this is a resonance suppressor or masking suppression. So similar to Melda Spectral Dynamics and Sooth and many others now. And I wanted to check this out and see what it does and how much is it, easier to work with, because, better or worse, they all practically do quite a similar thing. I think it really comes down to like maybe some features and the workflow, ease of use. So I've checked this out just like briefly, really briefly, and yeah, it's really easy to use in a sense that I really think that the model where you're using the EQ curve as a kind of a boost into the threshold that is like listening to the signal to see where to suppress and where not to suppress. I think that that kind of model is much better and easier to work with than the one that we have in Melda. And I'm saying that because maybe I'm just used to like using an EQ by creating filters like this, just double clicking, create a filter, push something more into the detection circuit, and it's just gonna, remove more resonances in that area. So for me, it's kind of like much easier to use it that way. That's why I think that Sooth is like much easier to use for some tasks. But out of all the features, and I've checked out like the advanced controls, so it does also have like bands where it's like splitting into bands. And I'm just comparing this to the other resonance suppressors. So it does have these bands that you can also control in such a way that you can like, cut less or more. And you also have the EQ curve, which you can use to push certain parts of the signal to be cut more or less. The one thing that's missing here, just to skip like through everything, not to go through every single button because they are present in others, I think it's missing the gain reduction limit. So the range limiter, which is something that we do have in M Spectral Dynamics. And I really find it super useful and really like essential when used in any kind of, let's say, mastering, purpose, because I don't want it to push more than a certain amount, even if something goes crazy. Like, even if it does, I'm guessing that there is a reason it happened. And if I do want it to push more, what I can, I can just like remove that range limiter and say, okay, compress as much as needed to satisfy the threshold and the parameters being set. But having that freedom to actually just apply that range and say, okay, this is the maximum amount of gain reduction you can do. That's really useful. It doesn't differ in features from others. I have to say that sensitivity and precision are the same. So when using precision, more or less, it's just gonna make those resonance reductions narrower or wider. The same in sensitivity is like how sensitive it is to the differences in between loud and quiet resonances being suppressed. And we have this cool thing that is the shape. So from being flat and we can just switch to flat as well, and then just nothing happens. But we can switch the other part of this knob from none into pink noise, and it's actually going to balance the entire threshold to confer with pink noise. And that is something that you might want to have on the master. And by the way, you can go from that none, so flat, into that pink noise slope gradually, which is something that you can also do in Melda. In Melda Spectral Dynamics, you don't have that option in Sooth, but as I said, in Sooth, you can also apply these filter shapes where you can push things differently. But yeah, Sooth doesn't have that kind of approach where you can see that threshold and you can slope that threshold differently. When talking about mastering, saying like, okay, I want my master to adhere to the pink noise kind of slope, and I want to apply that slope and everything that goes over it, that's what I want to suppress. And then I would maybe use less precision if I just wanted to push down and make sure that my song is adhering to that, slope, if it wasn't about resonance, but maybe, spectral balance control. And if I wanted to push on the resonance as well, I would push up on the precision, because then all those notches being applied, all of those resonance suppressions are getting more and more narrow, so more and more precise. Sometimes on the mastering, that can be a no-no because you are suppressing on the harmonics that are punching out the most. And that is actually the thing that, is the character of the sound. So you might want to avoid that. But as for single sounds, yeah, that is something that you might actually want. So it's a good thing. It has all of the features. You can tilt, aside of having this like going from flat into, let me just remove this. Aside of going from flat into pink or whatnot, you can also tilt the entire threshold. You see that? You can tilt it left and right. And you can also move that tilt frequency. Like where is the center of that tilt filter frequency? More to the right, more to the left. So from 300 hertz to 3000 hertz. We do have the mix, dry to wet. We do have the attack and release. Most importantly, we can also listen to the difference. So we can listen to the delta of, the signal that's actually being suppressed. So when I play this, so we are listening to what's actually being taken out, the resonances that are being reduced. So we're listening to what's being, attenuated. And if you listen to it, it's much easier to, decide on the attack and release times to know what's actually being taken out. Okay, and that does do its job properly, as we said. And we have the limiter on top of everything at the exit. And yeah, Melda also has that. Sooth doesn't. And I'm comparing to those two because those are the most popular. In my opinion, Sooth being the most popular and Melda being, whatever all of those resonance suppressors do on steroids. So the limiter at the end, we have the auto makeup, of course, for any of those, gain reduction changes. Have the auto makeup bringing that up. We can smooth out the curve that we are applying using the smooth. But the smoothing usually just works, from what I've noticed, it works when you learn a specific curve. So if I was to play the song and click on the learn button, so I think that's enough. I think it should have applied that. Not sure why it didn't. I think I know why it didn't. Yeah, because I was on the, the shape was all the way on the balance of the pink noise. So if I go back to none for the shape, it's going to actually give me the shape of the average loudness of each of the parts, for each of the frequencies. So we can capture, the average for the entire spectrum and then decide to suppress anything that goes above that. And we can, of course, adjust that as well. So I could add another EQ point maybe here and just say, okay, so let's suppress more on this part and less on there. So we can still adjust once we learn the curve. And yeah, you can also make sure that, what you're suppressing is linked left and right or left and right split. So each one separately, left and right being, separately attenuated. Or we can go to mid-side, and those are, again, separated. When attenuated, they don't have the linkage right here. You can see that when I go back to linked, this is the only thing that's linked. So left and right being linked, and whichever one triggers the threshold, both of them are getting suppressed. And that's really cool. So aside of all of that, having this learn function, that's also nice. You can learn let's say another song's average, spectral balance and just apply that as a default, as a preset, apply that to your song if you find that useful. But we also have this sidechain right here, which is basically going to be applying another signal as a sidechain to what's getting suppressed. So let's say listen to the kick drum and suppress resonances in the bass exactly where the kick drum is or anything of the sort. meaning we could apply, the vocal to suppress the synths or the guitars so that the vocal could punch through the mix. So any of those is applicable. In that regard, I find it really nice. As I said, both Sooth and Melda that I always compare to can both do that. But this is a new plugin, so I really wanted to see what's going to be so special. And honestly, there is nothing special. Waves is really good at GUI. So I really like the graphical user interface. Waves is really good at doing those nicely. So in the end, it's really easy to use. I would definitely compare this to Sooth. And then depending on the price, I'd buy which is cheaper, this one or the Sooth. Honestly, I don't see that much difference aside of the Sooth being able to, let me just see so aside of Sooth being able to do oversampling and stuff like that, I don't see that much difference. This one also has the limiter, Sooth doesn't on the output. So this is a really, really, really good alternative to all of those spectral compressors or resonance suppressors. And I wanted to see what the price is, and the actual price is $39.99. So this is super cheap. Like, yeah, it's on save now, but even when it's going to be at full price, it's going to be $79. That's way cheaper than Sooth. Yeah, way cheaper than Sooth. And it really does the same job, honestly. I will spend some days testing this just to see if I really like the way it's working on those, resonances and whatnot. I did try some other cheaper variants from other companies as well, just to see how well they do their job. And I really do prefer this kind of, approach, as I've said, using like EQ filters to boost the signal where I want it to be suppressed more. So I really like that kind of workflow. It's much faster to just, use some workflow like that to just suppress things that I really need than the way it's being applied in Melda. So that's it. See you in the next video. So far, I have recorded over 80 hours of lessons to help you become a professional producer. And now, thanks to Levin.org, I can offer them to everyone completely free. Check out the free music production certificate at mixingacademy.com.